Could the Cowboys go all in 2022? And if they wanted to, should they? All that and so much more on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And I am joined by Joey Ickes. You can find him on Twitter at Joey Ickes. Joey, you wrote an article this week on SI.com about if the Cowboys could go all in 2022. My first question for you is, should they?
Always. That's always
Yes.
the answer. Yes. Every year. So, and the reason, we come up with these sort of meme level, almost little quote, running backs don't matter, right? The cap's a myth, sacks are a quarterback stat, all this kind of thing. And one of mine is that 5 years is football eternity. And that, like, if you think back to 5 years ago, when you think about what the Cowboys team looked like then and how different it looks now, you should almost never be worried about what's going on 5 years in the future, because you just never know what's going to change, what's going to happen, what your team's going to look like. You should always be worried about the current year that you're looking towards, and then maybe a year or two after that, just to make sure that you're at least being looking at the whole picture of a decision. Yeah, for sure.
Sure. All right. So we're going to run through the possibilities for the Cowboys to go all in, what they would need to do, how they would go about doing it. So let's just dive right into some of these contracts. So again, check out Joey's article on SI.com, the Cowboys site with Mike Fisher. Let's look at some of these contracts that they could potentially restructure, which ones we feel like are a lock. I think the Dak Prescott contract is going to be restructured pretty quickly. That one seems pretty easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The way it was written to be restructured. They're going to do it. They've done it with every quarterback contract that they've written for a long time. So yes, for sure. And
I believe they're going to save about $15 million if they restructure that deal, correct?
Yes, that's right. If they maximize it, because it's a 4-year deal, they'll have to add, additional years down at the end of the contract. I think there's one of those already. They may have to add a void year at the end of the deal to get that full benefit. But yes, to get to $15 million, they can very easily save 15 by restructuring his deal. Yes.
And that, of all the contracts we're going to talk about, seems the most likely, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's we'll get to the next couple of guys that, can bring the biggest bang for your buck. But that's the one that can get you the most money, the easiest. You're confident he's going to be around for a long time. Yeah. And so because of that, it's real easy to flip that switch back and add those voided years and worry about those later.
I'm going to pair the next two together because they've been in the news a lot. Demarcus Lawrence and Amari Cooper. So according to your article, the Cowboys, if they did the maximum restructure with Demarcus Lawrence, could save $14.3 million, and with Amari Cooper, $15.1 million. Of these two, which one do you think is more likely, and would you flip the switch on both of these contracts?
Oh, man, the more likely question is a great question. And I don't know, honestly, what answer I can give there, because this is one of those strings of logic that we get on the Cowboys narrative side relatively often at this point that I just can't follow the logic with. Most of the time, there's at least a string of logic that you can follow through and say, okay, they feel like they can do this better with this guy or whatever. And with these two guys, I just don't see how your football team gets better when you let go one of your 6 or 7 best players on your team, regardless of which one it is. So,
all right, so let's go through this really quickly. So let's talk about Lawrence.
Right.
Could you see them talking themselves into saying, hey, we played without Lawrence for a majority of the season last year. We're going to bring back Randy Gregory, and we want Micah to play more edge anyways. We could do without Demarcus Lawrence. Is that the way they're going to talk themselves into it?
I think if they're going to talk themselves into it, that's the way they're going to do it.
Yeah.
But if you do allow yourself to think that way, then you got to think about what the ramifications are at other positions. That means, okay, now we were probably going to prioritize linebacker anyway in the draft and free agency and stuff to pair a guy with Micah and to let Micah do his rush stuff in sub packages anyway if he stayed at linebacker. Now, if he's switching to play more edge, now we need another linebacker too on top of that. And so and this is sort of the problem with these sorts of moves, is you wind up running on a treadmill or a hamster wheel almost. It's like you go out and yes, you save some money by letting go of Tank, but now by letting go of Tank, you've created a hole at left end. To fill that hole at left end, we're going to move Micah to play that role. And now we've created a hole at linebacker, which is a less important position, but now we've created another hole at linebacker when there already was one. So you don't ever improve your team by improving the guys in the middle or the bottom of your depth chart. Like the way you improve the guys at the middle is you improve the guys at the top and let it all trickle down. So I can't get on board with letting either of those guys go.
Yeah, we'll get to Amari, but Lawrence, I feel like if they do decide to move on, it's a really deep free agency edge class. Like there's a lot of guys out there that are really good. And maybe you could replace the Demarcus Lawrence with, let's say, I'm just throwing out a name, like Von Miller, right? Could you get Von Miller at a cheaper price than Lawrence? Potentially. Could you go out and get somebody like Chandler Jones? Potentially. The problem is you just don't save all that much money by cutting Demarcus Lawrence, right? Like, is it the number of $6 million, something like that?
Yeah, right about there. Let's see. We can look at it and figure it out exactly.
So if you cut Lawrence, it's not like you have all this sort of money that you can go out and spend on somebody else. You're probably just using that money to get Randy Gregory back. Now you could make an argument the draft has a lot of edge rushers, and maybe you find a long-term answer there. It doesn't make sense to me to cut him when you only save a few million.
Right. I'm on the same page for sure. You're not going to you're not going to turn around that $6 or $7 million and get the same amount of talent that you would get on the field if you just had Demarcus Lawrence on the field.
And the good thing about it, if you do restructure Lawrence, is his injury this year, I know it was a broken foot, and I know that's always worrisome, but it's not a back injury, which is why he's been injured the last couple of years, right? Like even when he came back from the foot injury, he looked really good. Like he was their second best defensive player other than Micah Parsons in the playoff game. I have no problems at all keeping Demarcus Lawrence around for the next 2 or 3 years. I think he's still going to be a really good edge rusher.
Yeah, and I do think that there's an opportunity with Lawrence that exists that probably doesn't exist with Amari, where I think you could go to Tank and you could explain to him sort of where you are, that you want to keep him around, but that you just need to change some language in his contract. You want to give him the ability to earn the same amount of money.
Yes.
But for cap purposes, you want to account for it a little different. And in exchange, instead of him having, an $18 million salary that's not guaranteed, you're going to give him a $10 million fully guaranteed salary with a bunch of bonuses that, and we could get into the weeds on the cap stuff, don't count against the cap because they're considered not likely to be earned because he didn't play most of the year. And you could do big things like a big bonus if he's on the active roster for one game more than he was on the active roster for in
which would be like 10
2021.
Games, right?
Exactly. Yep. If he's on the active roster for 11 games in 2022, he gets a $8 million bonus. And none of that $8 million counts towards the salary cap until it happens. And then it rolls in. And by that point in time, you can, you deal with that stuff later on with accounting if it happens. But because if he plays 12, 14, 16, 17 games next year, you're happy to pay him the $18 million.
Absolutely. Yep.
The problem is that he hasn't played that many games most years. So you build it in a way that it benefits both of you. If he performs, he gets paid the way he's paid to perform or the way he's going to perform. And if he doesn't, then the team is protected a little bit. And I think that you could probably work something out there. And I know, through the grapevine that the Cowboys are exploring that idea for sure.
And that was my next question. How likely is that to happen? And it sounds like we're starting to hear whispers that feels pretty likely, right?
Yeah, I think they'll at least, it's because, like you said, they don't save that much by cutting him. I think that they will at least explore the idea of, okay, how do we save a similar amount of money and keep the player,
Yes.
and maybe doing it without sacrificing Stephen Jones' coveted 5 years from now cap space.
I want to talk about Amari, but let's take a quick break so we can tell you guys about BetOnline. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam with both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of the sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's go to Amari, the big one here. If they restructure him, they can save $15 million. If they cut him, I believe it's $16 million, around there. This one bothers me because I don't see how in the world you are a better team next year without Amari Cooper on the roster. And if you can save $15 million by restructuring him, do it. That's enough probably to sign Randy Gregory and maybe somebody else. Am I crazy here?
No, not at all. I went through this exercise a little bit last year when the cap was crunched a little bit more than normal. And part of my brand is that the cap is not real, right? And so when a player would get released by a team, I would have people come in my mentions on Twitter and say, "See, the cap is real. They cut this guy." And the answer to that is exactly what you said with Amari, is that they can save almost the same amount of money by restructuring Amari as they can by releasing him. So by deciding to release him, they're deciding that $1 million in cap space, the difference between what you could save by restructuring him and what you save by cutting him, is worth more to them than the player. What that means is not that the cap is real or that the cap is a restriction. It means that they didn't really want the player on their team anymore. Otherwise, they would have obtained the cap space without letting go of the player. And so that's the exact situation with Amari. And just like you, I don't understand it at all. I don't see how you expect to play offense next year. The way the offense is currently constructed with Dalton Schultz and Cedric Wilson and all those guys also gone. Michael Gallup coming off an ACL, even if he does come back, who knows what sort of shape, what sort of way he's ready to play by that point in time, or when he's ready to play. And then basically you're left with CeeDee Lamb and Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And it's like, what kind of offense do you build around those guys with Dak Prescott and an offensive line you're already going to have to invest some resources in? So I don't understand it. I think it's extremely cut and dry. And this is like, the Amari situation is one of the more aggravating situations to me as somebody who like really appreciates like the Rams approach to team building, where it's like, and even if they weren't, even if it wasn't the Rams being like all in for a 3 or 4 or 5 year run, even if it was, I really appreciated the Browns like fully committing to a rebuild and the Dolphins fully committing to a rebuild, because what that is it's the old Sigmund Bloom clarity, right? Like we're all pulling the rope in the same direction. So every decision we make is for a certain purpose. So like the Rams traded a couple of first round picks for Jalen Ramsey. But they didn't hem and haw about paying him for a year and a half and just plug him into the defense they were already playing and say, hey, he made our defense better. They traded first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey. They made him the highest-paid player, the highest-paid cornerback in NFL history in the league. And then they hired defensive coaches with the specific purpose of how do we maximize Jalen Ramsey's impact on the game on a week-to-week basis. And they even talked about it during the Super Bowl broadcast Collinsworth did, about how they talked about getting Ramsey touches. So they would use the tendencies of the Bengals to decide which wide receiver he was going to be covering on a particular play to increase the odds that Jalen Ramsey was involved in the play.
Yep.
And that's like the complete opposite of what the Cowboys do, right? They trade a first round pick for Amari and we're like, yes, commitment. Like they're trying to like make the offense better. They traded a big pick. They're committing to this. And then for a year and a half, they hemmed and hawed about whether they were going to pay him, to the point where they let him hit the free agent market and take offers from other teams. And then they do pay him, and then they just leave him plugged in the offense, and just make him a part of the progression without, using Landon's term, pressing the easy button to get him easy targets and receptions and things like that. And then now here we are, 2 years into his new contract, and we're talking about whether we're going to release him to save some cap space. And it's like none of these things add up to a synergistic, like all pulling in the same direction approach to running the team. And it's really it's hard to follow. And that's why I say I can't follow the logic on some of this stuff, is because either you're trying to win a championship in the next couple of years, or you're not trying to win a championship in the next couple of years. You're trying to win one 5 years from now. And the two decision-making paths on those situations are like drastically different. And they don't really they seem to be sort of doing what they always do, just sort of riding the fence half and half and trying to finish.
Thing is so weird because I feel like they traded in 2018. They were 3-5 when they traded for Amari. They traded for Amari because I don't want to say Dak was being ruined or anything like that, but he kind of was, right? Like, you go look at Dak's splits from the end of 2017 and the first half of 2018. We're talking about a quarterback that I think he had a pass rating of like 83 during that stretch. Yeah. And then you trade for Amari and Dak goes crazy. He goes off. The Cowboys make the playoffs that year, and then they win a playoff game, and then they didn't sign him after that season, which to me didn't make any sense, right? So Amari comes back in 2019. He has a 1,200-yard season and 8 touchdowns, and you let him hit free agency. Right. And then he comes back in 2020. He has another amazing year. He had 11 touchdowns with 4 different quarterbacks, primarily playing with Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci and Cooper Rush. And now he had a season where he played with a hurt Dak. He was banged up, and now, hey, let's get rid of him. I just don't understand this one at all. Like, did the Cowboys front office just never love Amari even before they traded for him, and they just felt like, hey, we had to do this in order to keep interest in the team? It just feels so odd to me, Joey.
Yeah, that's exactly the same way that I feel. It just doesn't follow a logical path of action from the trade to now here we are going into the 4th or 5th season since the trade. And it feels like the whole way they were just like sort of reluctantly having Amari Cooper on their team. And they only paid him after Washington made an offer to him. And they, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, why did you trade a first-round pick that you hold so dearly to your heart in most situations? You traded a first-round pick for this guy claiming, hey, he's 24 years old. He's going to be here a long time. And then none of your actions followed that. And here we are now going into the 2022 season with another set of, rumors and potential actions that just doesn't tie itself to that at all.
But what's frustrating is you traded a first-round pick for him, and he did exactly what you were hoping for him to do. He produced despite not a ton of targets, and he made Dak better.
Right.
I mean, I don't get it. You can look at Dak's career splits with and without Amari, and it's drastic. You're talking about somebody I believe has like 109 passer rating and like 8 yards an attempt with Amari, down to under 7 and an 84 passer rating. Why would you want to get rid of his best receiver, who is 27 years old and is the best route runner on the team? I just don't understand it. But let's move to some other guys, because we've got other guys to talk about. Zach Martin, a full restructure, $8.5 million. I would do that one in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. Yeah,
he's going to be around here for a while. I don't see any signs of aging from his game. That one seems pretty likely, right?
Right, absolutely. He's been a little more banged up the last couple of years than he was early in his career, but there's no signs of his play declining due to age, and he's been able to play through most of those injuries. So absolutely.
So we've got the Dak for us. I mean, we would do Dak, Demarcus Lawrence, Amari, and Zach Martin, and that saves you. What is that? Almost 50 million in cap space right there.
A little over 50.
A little over 50. All right, let's go through a couple more of these. Tyron Smith.
I have a little bit of an interesting take on Tyron.
Okay.
And I've talked to you guys about this. So I think the Cowboys have to feel so much better about Tyron Smith going from 21 to 22 than 100%. They did coming off of 2020 going into 21.
Yeah, we've stolen that take, by the way.
Yeah, he missed games. Yeah, he missed games, and I get it. And that's part of a trend in his career that he's missed games. But like any offensive lineman in the NFL could have gotten rolled up on on those 2 plays that he got rolled up on when his ankle got hurt. And it happened twice. Like, that's the other side of it, is that it's not just like he got one high ankle sprain and missed 7 games or whatever. Like,
he came back pretty quickly from the high ankle sprain too. Like 3 games he missed and he came back.
Right. He came back and he was, a little shaky in the first game, but then after that he was fine. And then he got hurt again. And then they sort of waited until close to the playoffs, brought him back for the playoffs, etc. But the thing that hasn't been an issue, the neck wasn't an issue at all. The back wasn't an issue at all. He moved incredibly well, especially early in the year, was moving unbelievably. So there's really no reason to feel hesitant about Tyron unless he's given you messages that, hey, I'm a couple of years from retiring. Like, I might even extend Tyron because he's, that's an option that isn't included in the article because that wasn't the premise, right? But I might even look to say, okay, hey, Tyron, we love you. We want to keep you around. Let's run this thing out for 3 more years. We'll give you a decent sized signing bonus this year. And then we'll sort of keep the salaries at the same level. You get a bump here this year for the big signing bonus, and you're still cheaper than the rest of the tackles in the league. You get to keep your family here for the rest of your career. You don't ever have to worry about playing anywhere else. And we've got our left tackle for 5 more years. And now we can worry about, okay, who's the swing tackle guy, right tackle guy, and know that the left side is going to be solid as long as he's there. And like I said, the neck and back thing, from what he said about how he felt to the way he played, like, it seems like the surgery last year resolved that situation. So I feel way better about Tyron going to 22 than I did coming into 21.
Do you think this is the healthiest he's been in like 5 years going into February and March?
Yeah. Because I can't imagine, like, as we age, we all start to, hurt a little bit, right? We sleep on our shoulder the wrong way. And we wake up and can't move for 2 days, right? I can't imagine what he was going through with the neck and back issues that he was having and having to wake up every day and go to work and train and all that kind of stuff just to try to get himself ready. And now, like, he doesn't, at least from the way he moved and the way he talked, he doesn't have that anymore.
Right.
And there's a saying that bad backs never get better, right? But the surgery may have done the trick here, in that he seems like things are a lot better for him now than they were over the course of the last few years. And if that's the case, I mean, he's still one of the best offensive tackles in the game when he's on the field.
So right there, those 5 moves would net the Cowboys $62.5 million. That would put them about 40-ish million under the salary cap. But we're not done. We're going to keep going through a couple more of these names. But let's take a quick break to tell you guys about Built Bar. This time of year, almost everybody's given up on their New Year's resolution, but not us, because we are sticking to ours because we love Built Bar. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, with most Built Bars only containing 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They have so many great flavors, including mint brownie, coconut almond. And the new flavor this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. They are all so delicious and they're healthy. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, Joey, let's run through a couple more of these names. And just kind of yes, no, and a simple explanation on these. Ezekiel Elliott, $9 million if you restructure him.
The answer to that one's no. Like, clearly, you shouldn't sign running backs to second contracts anyway. You really shouldn't restructure them 3 or 4 years into said second contracts. Like, no, that's one of those that was very clearly part of this like alternative universe where they're just being completely reckless about what they're doing. You don't restructure Zeke at this point now.
Now, if the Cowboys restructure Zeke, I actually wouldn't hate it because to me that would signal we are all in, right? We are pushing all of our chips in to go win in 2022 and 2023. If that move is on top of all of these other moves, and we're just trying to give ourselves as much cap space as possible to go out and sign free agents and trade for guys, I'm actually okay with it. But by itself, absolutely not, right? There's no way.
Yeah, that's one of those that, like, it goes back to what we were talking about before. Like, if they release Amari Cooper and Demarcus Lawrence to save cap space and then restructure Ezekiel Elliott to save cap space, like, what are you doing? Like, there's no clarity about what's going on. It's going in 2 completely opposite directions. Like, either rebuild the thing and eat all the dead hit this year and turn around and start to think towards the future for 2023 and beyond with maybe a new head coach and all that kind of stuff. or let's freaking go for 2022 to 2024 here and just push everything back as far as you can and let's go. But if those two paths diverge, then it just makes no sense. And that's where I think you said it well. If you're all in and you're going for it, then let's go for it. Sure, push the money back with Zeke. But if you're sort of trying to ride the fence and do both, it just doesn't make any sense. It just proves that you're trying to win the salary cap trophy and not the Lombardi trophy.
Did they give you a trophy for that? I think Stephen Jones thinks so, at least.
I bet he has one of those little ones on his desk that like sits there that says like salary cap space champion of the world or something like that on it. I bet he does.
All right, couple more. Lyle Collins, $7 million. I could see them going either way on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's one of those that like I probably wouldn't, because he's a really good tackle. And I wouldn't move him to guard either. He's a tackle and he's really stinking good at it. If they decide, okay, Terrence Steele's our right tackle, we like Terrence as much or more than we like Lyle anyway, we can save the $7 million and play Terrence. We feel okay about Josh Ball and our ability to bring in, another veteran tackle to help sort of the way they've done it in the past with a young tackle and a veteran tackle to be sort of the backups there. Okay, but I don't think you get better by doing that for sure. I think the way that you have the best offensive line possible is Lyle playing right tackle and Terrence still there to fill in for either tackle who might run into some injury. And then you add you add a big beefy resource to the interior on the left side or at center, and then away you go. And I think you feel pretty good about what you've got.
I agree. A couple more. Anthony Brown at $3 million. I actually would just leave his contract the way it is.
I'm with
basically use him up this year. And actually, I think he would be a good trade candidate too. If somebody needs a corner and they're offering a 4th round pick, you could save some money that way. I think I would do that. Blake Jarwin, $2.7 million. What do you?
I mean, he's sort of the same way with me as Anthony Brown, where it's like, okay, we can leave his contract alone. We can release him to save some money to turn around and pay Dalton Schultz or pay, OJ Howard or somebody like that. Or we can just move on completely, or just keep Blake Jarwin and let him play out the year and go forward.
All right. So that's the majority of the moves that you talked about in the article. So let's say the Cowboys do open up somewhere between $20 and $40 million in cap space, and they're going all in. What's one move that you would love to see them do, either in the draft, in a trade, in free agency, to really signal we're going for it?
Oh, that's a great question. I would love to see them have conversations with Minnesota about Adam Thielen.
Okay.
Because these are the situations where you can really take advantage of a market inefficiency, right? Is that they just brought in a completely new regime, right? And there's a lot of rumors and stuff in the mill right now about they're going to make some big decisions about that roster in the coming months. And if you could wind up with, they're not going to give up, you're not going to get Justin Jefferson from them, right? That's the young cornerstone piece they're probably building around for the next 5 to 8 years, right? But Adam Thielen's a veteran player. He's been around for a long time, has a pretty decent dollar amount attached to him.
No guaranteed money left on his deal.
Exactly. You could trade for him, and all of the dead money stays there with them. All of the prorated bonus money stays there with them. I don't know what his cap numbers are or anything like that. But
I'm looking at it right now. It's in 2022, it's $12 million, 2023, $13 million, 2024, $15 million.
And that's his base or his total cap?
That's his base number.
Okay, yeah. So you're bringing in a $12 million receiver, and I mean, holy crap. That's talk about a wide receiver trio that can get open, create separation, beat man coverage, score touchdowns in the red zone. Like, now you're cooking. Put whoever you want to put at tight end. It doesn't matter. We got 3 wide receivers that are all going to get open against man coverage. Let's freaking go.
I like it. It's a good strategy. So we are both in agreement. Listen, go all in. You've got a quarterback who's 28 years old. You've got 2 Hall of Fame offensive linemen, although I hesitate to say that anymore with what we saw last week. I'm still mad at
joke.
Yeah, I'm still mad at those guys, but had a good conversation with a Hall of Fame voter. They made me feel a little bit better about what's going on there. So, so go all in. The NFC, I think this year is going to be the weakest it's been in, I don't know, a decade, Joey. Like, the Rams are still going to be good. The Rams are going to bring back a lot of their guys. The Packers, we'll see about Aaron Rodgers. Even if Rodgers returns, there's no way that roster is going to be better than what it was last year. And then outside of those 2 teams, like, San Francisco is going to be starting a second-year quarterback. I don't know if there's anybody else in the division that scares you.
Nope.
The NFC South is a dumpster fire of a division right now. Why not go out there and try to get the number 1 seed? Try to make a run to the Super Bowl. I think it's very possible.
Yeah, I'm in the same place. And I sort of generally have that philosophy that you should sort of do that, because the only way that you give yourself a chance to win a championship is to swing big, right?
Yep.
And so I sort of believe that anyway. And then when you add on top of that just how weak the conference looks this year, and there's a legit chance that Aaron Rodgers isn't even in the conference next year. And then you're talking about the Rams, and I mean,
that's it, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you get like a huge step from Justin Fields in year 2 or something like that, or Trey Lance or somebody, like you're looking
or
at
somebody makes a big trade inside, the Eagles go out and get Russell Wilson or something like that. But I mean, this is my last thought before we head out. I think the Cowboys should be looking at this as like a 2-year window.
Yeah.
2022, 2023, because if Rodgers is there in Green Bay this year, I almost assume he's not going to be back in 2023. I think the Rams probably only have a year left in their kind of window, right? And Seattle, I mean, all these teams, I don't see any of them rising to the top super quickly. So make moves to go and try to win a Super Bowl either this year or next year. And I think you can do that pretty easily. So, Joey, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You'll actually be back next week as you and Landon have a different discussion about how to tear it down. I actually know that Landon is leaning a little bit that way. He would like to see the Cowboys kind of start a rebuild, which that's going to be a fascinating conversation.
It's a scary thought. It's always scary to go into that wilderness for sure. But
it is. And we haven't been there in a long time. And listen, to his point, maybe this team does need to hit the reset button. But next Friday, you guys will be back talking about that. Follow Joey on Twitter at Joey Ickes. You can follow the show at Locked On Cowboys. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back here on Monday. Thanks, everybody.